I got started out, I got very lucky in New York City and got a job as a production assistant in the commercials. I started out in the 80s when everything was on film. And it's not like it is today where you guys have all this accessibility with the technology. The technology is so easy right now for you, and that's, in a way, that's so wonderful. The downside to that is that you're not going to be experiencing an apprenticeship like a true artist would, or like how a plumber or electrician would. And I put those two in the same category because it's really important that everybody learns all the aspects of anything that you're doing. And when you start out as a production assistant and you're getting people coffee and you're cleaning out the trash and you're running errands all day long and you're watching people how they're making films and you're dealing with sort of the back end of the production, you're learning a lot about how a foundation to the production gets put together. And I know it doesn't make sense when you say, well, I'm getting out trash and I'm taking out the trash and I'm getting somebody coffee, but there's a lot about that. And that will also teach you how to deal with people. I remember one time, it was really frustrating, it was on a commercial, in the morning, the agency, so you have a production company, you have an agency, and the agency producer came in and she was in a panic, and she's like, oh, I think I left my iron on in my apartment. So our producer's like, well, let's send one of our PAs to your apartment. And I had to go to this woman's apartment to see if she left her iron on. And I'm like, be an adult, learn how to deal with something like that. But what that taught me was how to treat people when I'm in charge. How I'm gonna learn how to, I learned at that moment how I'm gonna speak to somebody who's underneath me, who's not at the same level job that I am. And so, everything's a learning experience. And, for me, I took every moment as a production assistant and looked at it that way. And I did whatever I could to stay on set and learn and get to know the crew. And I finally met a camera assistant who I voiced interest in learning about camera. And he's like, all right, well, you know what? You seem like a nice guy. Let me take you to a camera rental house when I'm prepping cameras, and I'll start teaching you the cameras. I started doing that, and then I started tagging along on jobs for free with him to help him out. And then he slowly started giving me opportunities, and I started getting some paying jobs as a loader, camera loader. You had to load film into the magazines in the dark and unload it in the dark, send it off to the lab, which is a very important responsibility then with film, because you're the first and last person handling the film. So if you expose the film to light, you could screw up the whole day of filming. And I slowly moved my way up that way, from first assistant to a second assistant to a first assistant, and then I would gather up my own money and rent the camera gear, and I got to know the guys at the lab, because when I was a production assistant, I used to bring the film to the lab, and I had to pick up the film in the morning from the lab, so I used to go really early and before my pickup, and I started talking to the lab guys, and I learned how they print film and how they photochemically deal with it. And by doing that, I developed a relationship, and that's an important part of what you do too. So those relationships later on opened up some doors for me. And so they're like, yeah, we'll develop your film for free. And the next thing you know, you shoot one thing, another, and somebody sees it. And, here I am today. It's different for you guys. You have all this technology. You can just run around with a DSLR and think up some crazy ideas and start filming it and cutting it together and put music to it, every other aspect that goes involved in cutting. And you have that at your fingertips, and that's wonderful. And you guys got to just keep doing that and keep looking at what you've done and learning from it, and keep improving on it. I tend to draw myself to personal stories that have some sort of meaning, that deal with personal struggle. And Cinderella Man is based on a true story about a boxer in New Jersey, Jim Braddock. And approaching the boxing, I wanted the audience to feel like what it felt like to be inside the ring. So the only way to do that is to get in the ring with the boxers and learn the choreography of the boxing. So in prep, while they were studying each fight and the choreography of the fight, so was I. Like you would study a dance and a dancer, so I would know when the boxes were moving, so I could decide where and how I wanted to, visually tell the story. But the big thing with Cinderella Man, more, as a cinematographer, you're helping tell the director's story, and it's all about the visual language. And you want to make the audience feel a certain way, but you don't want to take away from the story too. Sometimes some films are way too beautiful and you get lost in that and don't follow the story. So in Cinderella Man, I don't know if you remember, but the apartment that they lived in, the basement apartment, that was a set. And usually when you build a set, you build sets with walls, wild walls that you could move so you could put the cameras in different positions. Well, in prep, I was looking at the set and walking the set a lot and thinking about how I was going to light it. And I started realizing how terrible it must feel to live in that apartment. And I wanted the audience to feel that. I wanted them to understand what it was like to go through what the Braddocks were going through. So I decided, as a rule, that I wasn't going to move any walls. So that forced me to put the cameras in certain places and use only certain lenses. And I think if you really look at the film and look at those scenes in there, you start to feel claustrophobic. You start to feel what they feel. And I think that's important that, when you're telling a story, the visual story is a lot of times emotional. And you're trying to bring that emotion into the photography. And that's, in that case, that was one way of doing it. When I did Any Given Sunday, that was the first time that was my first ever film, by the way. Talk about trial by fire with the madman, Oliver Stone. But, up until that point, you didn't see sports films photographed in such a way. And again, I thought it'd be great to bring the camera, bring the audience onto the football field. And then we did that. And we did that by bringing the camera in there, which is interesting. But I probably physically the toughest film I made was Everest. We went and shot up the valley towards Everest, up to 17,000 feet. And then we filmed in the Dolomites in Italy at 10, 11,000 feet at minus 10 degrees often, in 3 feet of snow, and it wreaked havoc on your body. You can't move around quickly. So that film was very tough. I was a big fan of the comic and the cartoon when I was a kid, which was in the late 60s, early 70s. Really cheesy and corny, but it was great. And so I kind of feel lucky to have had the opportunity to work on it. When you do work on a film like that, it's a huge, huge endeavor. There's a lot involved in the visual effects world, where the visual effects production is almost as big as your production, your filming crew. So you work really closely with a visual effects supervisor and on how you're going to achieve some of the scenes that are written in the script. So some of that is a real Spider-Man, or is it a CG Spider-Man? Is it green screen? Is it motion capture? Is it a combination of motion capture and green screen? Are we doing visual plates that are in the scene, and how are we going to shoot those plates? There's a scene, a driving scene at night in the car, and we did that against green screen because of where the actors were at the time and where we needed to film the background, and it's also the amount of camera angles, and we only had a short amount of time with the actors. So it was better to shoot it against green screen and then shoot the plates later. The plates later had to be a 360-degree filming plates. We wound up using 12 cameras on a camera car, and they're lined up with a certain lens on certain angles and certain distances from each other and heights from the ground, which is very complicated. It's very costly, and very extremely time consuming. And all the cameras have to be in sync with each other. You can't just turn on camera 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They all have to turn on at the same time. They all have to be frame locked so that visual effects wise, they can stitch it all together perfectly. So, you know, that's, you know, you're working in a very different way on a visual effects film than you are working on a drama. Like Frost Nixon. Frost Nixon was a small budget film, $30 million, and we had a short amount of time to work on it. We built some sets, we used some locations, great costume design, great art director, and you worked closely together to help tell that story. And that was just a drama. There was no visual effects, and there might have been 1 or 2 small visual effects shots in it, but that's it. You know, comedy is kind of always told very straightforward, and it's really done through the actors, and I'm not very good at that. Horror, though, it's all on how you make the audience feel. It's like you always want the audience to feel like somebody's about to grab them from behind while they're watching the film. So they're always screaming, they're on top of it. Have you guys seen Blair Witch Project?
Yes.
I mean, how scary and creepy was that? And did you ever see the Blair Witch?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Well, yeah, kind of at the very end, but it's not really seeing with the edge. But I mean, I remember being really scared of that film. And it was all just telling that story visually and making the audience feel like, you know, like you're about to get jumped on by some witch. And you know, those are done with camera tricks and non-tricks, and sound. And that is something that you discuss a lot with the director and the production designer in pre-production. You have a lot of dialogue, a lot of communication between you guys. Small budgets, yes, are very positive. Smartphones, I mean, they're good for you guys to play with and learn on and sort of cut little films together for your computers. But when you start dealing with smartphones and big screens, there's a big problem there. The technology cannot hold up and starts to break apart the digital artifacting on a big movie screen. So we don't tend to use smartphones. We did some tests. There's a sequence in Spider-Man where Spidey's doing a lot of selfie stuff with his phone. So, you know, we tested the phones. We tested a bunch of other small cameras, and, you know, we came across something that we decided to use, which I'm not at liberty to discuss. You know, I had to sign a bunch of NDAs when we did these films. NDAs are non-disclosure agreements. So when you work on a film, you're asked a lot of times not to sort of repeat or talk about what you've done on the film or what the film's about until it's released to protect the integrity of the film. You know, you take these stories and film them. Take a DSL camera and just go and film that story right now. Get a couple of you guys, audition a few people, and you know, say, oh, you're good to be an actor, you're good to do this role, and make these films. Keep the stories short. Think about it as around 1 page is around 1 minute of screen time. 1 page of writing. A script is normally about 120 pages on the films. It's around 2 hours. So you want to make a 5-minute film, figure a way to write that story in 5 pages. And then film it, put it together, go on iMovie and put it all together and see how it comes out. And look at it and say, wow, that came out pretty good. Or that sucks. You know what? It sucks so bad, I gotta redo that. And now this time I'm gonna do it this way. It's like cooking. You know, you make a dish doesn't taste so good, but you like what the ingredients were, so it's like, you know what, I'm gonna try to remake that dish. And you're gonna keep remaking it until it gets to where you like it. And that's what's wonderful about it, you know? And we use a lot of other tools. We use camera cars with remote heads on them, which is a lot of fun. I love doing high-speed camera work, camera car work. I'm a little bit of an adrenaline junkie like that. It's fun. I'll get in the mix. Some helicopter work. I like getting in the helicopter and doing that type of work too. It's a thing about what you do as a cinematographer, or as the director, or as any sort of storyteller. You're figuring ways out to tell your story, and there's endless possibilities. There are financial restrictions to it, but there are endless possibilities. That's it's wonderful. You can just let your mind go. And you should. And we do drones. We use drones for certain things. We've used them along with Spider-Man on the last film. It was, it can be difficult because there's a lot of, it's not like, when you work in the film industry, it's not like at home, like my son has a drone, you just take it up and fly it, film. There's a lot of restrictions, and you have to follow a lot of the FDA laws with it. So you can't fly at night over houses and populated areas. So a lot of things on Spider-Man, a few of the scenes we used it for were night scenes. So we shot at dusk, and we'll do a dusk to night timing later when we finish the film, to make it look a little more like night. And I lit the dusk scenes and underexposed it a bit so that it feels more like a night scene. So there's some drawbacks to using them. They are great. They're also flying killing machines, so you have to be really careful and responsible when you're filming them around people. Accidents do happen, so you need to be a little smart about that. You know who I follow now, who I'm really, and I'm friends with, and I think he's an amazing cinematographer, and that's Emmanuel Lubetsky. His nickname is Chivo. He's somebody who really thinks out of the box and pushes limits, and that's what I like. In the past, there was Vittorio Storaro and Conrad Hall. Conrad Hall was an amazing man. He was all about learning the laws, learning the rules, and then breaking them. Learn them so you understand what they're about, and then go out and break them. And this is one time in your life where you can break them and you don't have to worry about the consequences. If you screwed up, you do it over again. Wonderful about learning what those rules are. And Conrad was the master of that. His work was amazing, it was beautiful, and he pushed the limits, and he's somebody that you could approach, and he would be very excited and crazy when you talk to him about ID. Well, the rules are the rules of photography, and it's, what those rules are. There's a really good book, for example, called Shot by Shot, and it's about composition. Well, look at, it's really important how you put a scene together and where the camera is. And this book is about putting the camera within those scenes and how to move the camera within the scenes. Well, there's certain rules about that. So learn those rules and then break them. And that's what I mean about it, about rules in cinematography. It's rules in photography, it's rules in filmmaking. It's rules in lighting. You're not supposed to use this light this way. Well, really? I have an idea that I think could make this light, give me a better light. I'm going to try it like that. Just be responsible and don't be, destructive with equipment. But, they say you can't use this light this way. Understand how that light works and then using it in a different way. If you think your idea with the way you're going to use that light is going to make something look better, putting a vase in front of a lens. It's like, well, this is a lens and it's supposed to have this perfect image. Well, I want the image to look a little messy. I'm going to take a window screen. I'm going to put that in front of the lens. Oh no, you're not supposed to do that. Why? Why am I not supposed to do that? Where does it say that you're not supposed to do that? It's not a moral decision here where I'm causing harm to anybody. So, I want to talk about it in a visual way, and that's that's what I mean by breaking rules. And I think it's important to look at it like that. It's very difficult to put yourself in front of the camera and to give a performance. And I think every filmmaker should try it. Everybody, no matter what job you want in the film industry, get in front of that camera and see what it feels like, and look at yourself, and look at the scenes you shot, and see and understand what the actor's going through. I think it's important to know what other people go through, because it's not you'll never comprehend it until you feel it yourself. You know what? It's very hard what I do. I've just done 4 films in 2 years, and they've all been away from home. I got 2 kids. It's great, takes you places, but when you get older and you have other responsibilities, it's hard. It's rewarding in the sense that, you look at your work and you're like, oh, I get to do what I love doing, and I make a great living at it. It allows me to live in an amazing place. There's a lot of downfalls. Every job you do could be your last film. It's important that you do a really good job when you're doing it. You work well with everybody. You're not confrontational, you're not difficult. And you hope and pray that the film does well, because that will open the door for another film, and also help for you to sustain your pay rate. You're not making movies, and you're not doing, your movies aren't doing well. When you start getting offered other films, at a lower pay rate. That's not fun. So, you kind of want to stay on top of it that way. But I think it's just really important to know that you just gotta be yourself, and it's okay to be yourself, and bring all of that out there, and know that, it's kind of, here's an analogy. It's just like standing naked in front of people and being comfortable with that. I'm not saying to get naked in front of people, but it's that feeling. It's that feeling of, I'm going to be uncomfortable here for a minute. I'm going to be so uncomfortable that I'm going to be comfortable. And I think that's important when you want to tell stories. There's no boundaries, there's no rules in that sense. There's no, you're not doing a mathematical equation that can only be done certain ways. You're not plumbing a house where, the water has to go in one way and come out another way. It's only, it can only happen that way. And I think that's something that's something to remember. It's something to use. You know what? I don't, to be honest with you. I'm dyslexic. I have ADHD. So writing is not my forte. What's a good thing about what I do is I work in the visual world. So I'm able to tell my stories that way. I've learned to communicate a lot, so that's how I've gotten over that bit of the writer's block. I think block in general is a thing we all experience in one way or another, and sometimes I think you just need to walk away from it and do something else for a little while, and then let it just come back to you. Go for a hike, go for a bike ride, whatever it is you like to do, just get away from it and don't put music on, don't even think about it, And I think sometimes then it comes back to you. It's an important. Wait, what does this say? You have dyslexia, and you understand me, you have my preference for visuality. Yes, I do. You know what's a really good book to read? It's a quick book. It's called David and Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell. And it's about overcoming. You know, you can actually use it in relationship to writer's block. It's about overcoming your disabilities and how you overcome them and how you become successful. You know, Bill Gates was never, he wasn't born a genius. And it's interesting because he used to spend, in high school, he used to sneak out of his house at 2 o'clock in the morning to a local university where they had computers the size of your classroom. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, nobody was on them, and he was able to sort of play on them and figure them out. And look where that person is today. And you know, we all have these disabilities, and it's what you do to overcome them. And that happens at work all the time. It's like you're dealing with equipment not showing up, people not being prepared. You have to climb a mountain every day on a film set, one way or another. He wasn't prepared and he wasn't prepped, and I think he was taking his insecurity out on the crew, so I stood up for the crew in that moment. Look, I come from nothing. My parents immigrated to America, hard-working class. They tried very hard to keep a straight life and raise 2 kids in an honest way, and I don't like to see working class people being abused like that. And so I didn't let it happen. But I don't get into an argument with directors when it's something that it's about the film. I think it's really important. It's that I'm there to help tell the director's story. I'm a first mate on the ship and he's the captain. And my job is just not to let him hit an iceberg. Or her, him or her, I should say. When I say him, I'm not referring to masculine. It's just, the way people speak a lot. I just finished a series of commercials with a great film director, a female film director, and so anyway, to get back to it, I think it's important that you don't argue with the director. He's got an idea, she's got an idea, they have an idea, let's just say that they have an idea that doesn't quite make sense to you, then, have them help to articulate. If it has nothing to do with the story, then try to communicate through that. But whatever it is, you need to find a way to, if it's an idea that's I'll say it, a stupid idea, it's not a smart idea, then find a way to make it better. Find a way to improve on it and to bring your visual language to the film and make make a better scene there that he's asking. Non-disclosure agreements are very simple. They're very simple in a big film, a small film, or in any workplace. They basically say, you can't talk about this. And it's really important that you keep that integrity, because that integrity isn't just about the film, it's about yourself. And what's happening today in society with all this social media, everybody's got to put everything out there. Look at me, I've done this, look at this, look at that, look at this is going on right now in this film. Well, you start giving away a lot of the information that you've asked not to talk about. You don't have any integrity with yourself. And you're causing damage to whatever it is you're working on. And you're causing a tremendous amount of damage to yourself because you won't get hired again either. So, integrity is a really important thing. It's what you put out there. And once you hit that send button, it is out there. You can't take it back. You can't deny it. It's out there. And a good example of that is look at the president, one of the candidates right now. He says things and then he turns around and says, I didn't say that. Cut to the film clip, he did. I even remember on Cinderella Man, this is really before, that was in 2004, so there was no Twitter and no Facebook, but somebody had posted a photograph from one of the fights. And we went back and where that photograph was, and we figured out the angle of where it was taken from. And we found the person. And the person was an extra who then wound up losing 25 days of work because he got fired at that point. So there's ways to find that, in the social media now, everything's watched. If you hear stories about somebody having a problem with an airline at that moment and they tweet it, and I've done it, and you know what? You get a response back from the airline. And all of a sudden they're looking to help you because they have people watching it. It's the same thing in film, people watching social media out there. So they see it. They're there to, for the most part, they bring education. They have some fellowships. They have a relationship with AFI, which is the American Film Institute, California. They hold seminars, bring out new technologies. It's funny you say that. I just got an email. There is this, Aeroflex is doing a demonstration with their new camera, with their high dynamic range technology that's just been incorporated in it. And, I haven't done my research on it yet, so I have no idea. So it's like something that I'll probably go to the clubhouse and see. And I could take some people with me if I wanted to, and have them experience what I was experiencing there. So it's a society of cinematographers. It's a club, but this club is not an elitist club in a sense that you have to have accomplished so many films and be recommended in, but they do reach out to the non-members to educate them on film. So that's what they do. Dramas, visual stories, real stories, things that's really sparked my interest in an odd way. Like last year, there was a film called Son of Saul. Son of Saul is a World War II film about a Holocaust victim in a Holocaust camp. And the film was filmed with one lens. And it was told in the first person. It's a very depressing story, but it made you feel like you were inside the concentration camp and you being the camera was there. And so that was really inspiring. There's a film called Ratcatcher by a female Irish director named Lynn Ramsey. And she told the story of this little boy, an odd boy in a way, in a very interesting way. And I've used that a lot as a reference. There's another film called The Diving Bell and the Butterfly, where Julian Snobel is the director with Janusz Kaminski as the DP, and they used a lot of, there's this plastic lens called a lens baby, and it's about a guy who becomes a paraplegic and how they tell his story, which is really inspiring. It's like, how am I going to tell an interesting story about somebody who's a paraplegic in a hospital bed, in a room? And the film's very inspiring. Films like Apocalypse Now and The Godfather, of course, are always inspiring because of the way those stories were told. And at that time, without the whole digital technology and visual effects world, it really sort of brought you to a place. In Apocalypse Now, the scenes of blowing up the jungle, put the jungle on fire, and the beach exploring. Those are all real explosions. You know, they were all real pyrotechnics that were used. Now you do a little bit of pyrotechnics, but you do a lot of that in the post world, the visual effects. This was all done real in camera. So, you know, that are inspiring to me. There was this film called Rams last year, an Icelandic film, about these two brothers that haven't spoken in 30 years and live next door to each other on farms in Iceland that raise rams. And it's their story, and it's kind of funny and tragic at the same time. Those you know, inspiring. I love those type of films, and they, you know, they kind of make you feel a certain way, which makes you look at your own work. You know, as I said, my parents immigrated to this country, and there was not a lot of outside influences. You know, I grew up in an Italian household that was, you know, very family oriented and very tight knit. What my parents did unconsciously, I mean subconsciously. Every once in a while, on a Sunday afternoon, there was a theater in Brooklyn. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. The theater doesn't exist anymore. And they would show foreign films, they'd show Italian films. And you know, being Italians, they would go see these movies. And without them realizing, they would take me to these films by Visconti and Fellini and Pasolini that were that whole Italian neo-realistic filmmaking, storytelling, like La Dolce Vita and 8½. Those films later became inspirations in my life. Not until I became a young adult and saw them again, and I realized, you know, kind of how much they took me away. So that was kind of like a subconscious role model in a way that wasn't a person. The biggest role model, I think, in a way, is my whole family in the sense that they were very hardworking, and they came here and they worked really hard and they followed the rules and tried to make a better life. And I learned a really good work ethic like that. I started working when I was 13 years old. You know, I wanted to go to the movies or wanted to hang out or whatever, and I asked my parents, hey, I want to go to the movies. They're like, great, go get a job and make some money and go to the movies. So that's what I did. So, you know, it's kind of, there were no role models that were popular in society for me that I knew or had any access to. I did not really start reading, only because of my difficulties, until later on in life, when I didn't have, you know, time pressure. So that's when, my early 20s, I started reading about the whole Renaissance art movement, which is really inspiring to me. So I think if I look at, as an adult, my role models, besides the few in the film industry, are artists like Leonardo and Michelangelo and Raphael, Dante. My son's named Dante, after Dante Alighieri, an incredible poet who tells a story basically about a journey. It's, you know, you guys heard of Dante's Inferno, but that's part of a trilogy, and that is basically a book about traveling with inside yourself and learning about yourself and coming to terms with it, and then coming to peace with it. And I think, you know, it's very inspiring when you start looking at it like that. Or there's musicians that have a lot of influence in my life too, like not Tom Waits and Nick Cave, and that has to do with the words that they put into their music that inspire me. So, you know, those, you know, in a way, those are the people that are role models in my life, that have been.